All right. Will you come look in this and make sure that you can? Yeah, I think I've got. I've already got. Make sure you sign in. Yeah, that's okay. Hey everybody. My name is Casey. I am the Chief Dietitian and the Director of Program Development at Provision Health and Wellness. We're over in Knoxville, and we are administering your wellness program for you. And today we're doing our first lunch and learn. And the topic is basically knowing your numbers, okay, and what the importance of that is. And so I'm pretty informal. If you've got questions during the midst of my, presentation, please ask, okay? And does everybody remember looking at their numbers when they got them? The day that we came over and did the biometric testing and so forth? Yeah. Okay. All right, very good. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to look at, I'll just use my computer here. The key to being proactive about your health. Okay, that's the importance of knowing those numbers. If you don't know your numbers, you don't know what issues you might have. A lot of, what is the blood pressure called? Has anybody heard like a little term? Blood pressure is the what? The silent killer, high blood pressure. Because you can't really feel that you have high blood pressure. You can't feel that you have high cholesterol, high triglycerides, low HDLs, high LDLs. And we'll talk about what some of those numbers are and what they mean to you. But you can't feel that. So if you don't go have those numbers checked, that's the importance of having a doctor that you go visit, even when you're well-checked visits, not just when you're sick. Going to see the doctor so that you can identify things earlier. Don't wait until we have an episode of some sort, until we're in critical mode, and now we've got to do something about it. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Does anybody know their cell phone number? Okay, you don't have to read it out to me. Does anybody know stats on a baseball game, stats on a football game, stats of a particular player who, UT. Right now, we're getting ready to start UT football season. Is anybody a football fan? Anybody watch football? Okay, sports in general. Do you know some numbers surrounding those people? You do. You know your phone number. You know maybe your mom or your dad's phone number or one of your friends. But we know numbers. We know numbers, but we need to know our numbers. Okay? All right. So my goal is to help you create a certain level of awareness. Okay? Blood glucose. What is blood glucose? What does that measure? Blood sugar. Exactly. Those are interchangeable words. So I might say blood sugar, I might say blood glucose. What are we trying to identify if we're looking at a blood sugar number or a blood glucose number? Is it important for only somebody who is living with diabetes to monitor their blood sugar? No. Okay, has anybody heard of metabolic syndrome? Okay, that's kind of the pre-diabetes. You've heard that, I'm just borderline. That's metabolic syndrome. One of the signs or one of the symptoms of metabolic syndrome is having a blood sugar that's elevated. Do you know what your blood sugar should be? Like, what is the top number that would be considered a little too high? 100. 100. If your blood sugar is above 100, we need to start looking at some things. What are you doing on a daily basis that could be contributing to that? And so as we get through this conversation here, I'm going to give you some tips. And it doesn't, I think one thing, let me ask this question. If you think about trying to get healthy or make changes, do you feel like it's an all or nothing situation? If you're trying to eat healthy, you just got to eat healthy, or you just don't, you just forget it? Who is under that mindset?
Which one?
If you want all or nothing, right. If I'm going to eat healthy, I've just got to cut all the junk out, and I can only eat healthy. That is bull. It doesn't work, clearly. I mean, we have a society full of people walking around who have said, I'm going to try this diet, didn't work. I'm going to try this diet, didn't work either. I mean, just the mere reason, just because you read a book doesn't mean that now your body has taken on whatever it is you read in that book, right? Baby steps. And we're going to look at some tiny little steps that you can take. The key is making one little change that you're comfortable with. I mean, like a little change, okay? Baby, infant steps. Once you're comfortable with that change, then you just add another little bitty baby step. And before you know it, you're doing things that don't even seem like much effort, but over time, those little bitty steps turn into great distance lengths of travel, okay? You've made huge gains by taking teeny tiny little steps. Don't look at the top of the staircase before you begin taking those steps. You know you've got to get to the top of the steps, okay? Just take one step at a time. That's all it takes, okay? So baby steps. We're going to look at some in a minute. Blood sugar is a measure of how well your body can basically store things, okay? Insulin is what takes the sugar out of the blood so that it can bring the sugar down to a more normal state. We need sugar in our bloodstream. That's how our bodies get their energy, okay? Our brains have to have that sugar in order to get through the day, okay? And your muscles do too. Okay. On your sheets, you're going to have information on each of these little topics that I'm talking about. Here's an interesting statistic. According to the American Diabetes Association, nearly 90%, come on in, nearly 90% of all people with newly diagnosed diabetes are overweight. Do you think that your weight can affect how well your body uses the sugar in your body? In your blood? Yes, absolutely. Blood pressure. Who can tell me what blood pressure, you have two numbers, right? You have a top number and a bottom number. Do y'all know the difference between those numbers? You may have heard, oh, my top number's not so bad, but my bottom number's horrible. You can have one within normal range and one out of range. Okay, blood pressure is a measure of how basically your body is receiving the blood. Okay, how it's pumping it through your body in terms of force. Okay, the systolic, the top number, that is the pressure in your blood vessels when your heart is beating. Okay, it's the pressure in the vessel. The diastolic is the pressure between the beats. Okay, that's why it's a lower number. Okay, so if your bottom number is high, that's not good because that's supposed to be the resting spot. Does that make sense? You want your top number to be high and your bottom number to be low. Sometimes you see the bottom number creeping up closer to the top number. That means there's never any rest time. You've got constant pressure in those blood vessels. Okay? If you have a balloon and you keep blowing air into it, will it eventually pop? Because of what? The pressure. There's no other, the pressure gets so great that it just pops. That's what happens when your blood pressure is not controlled. Okay, your vessels can only handle a certain amount of pressure in there. So you don't want a vessel to pop. That would be an aneurysm. You heard of an aneurysm before? Okay. Another thing that can happen when your blood pressure is high is if you've got plaque in your bloodstream, or not your bloodstream, but in your arteries, can build up on the side of the artery wall. If the pressure is tremendously high in those blood vessels, it can knock that stuff loose. Okay, and where does it go? It can hit the heart, but it can go to the lungs. Okay, it can go to the brain. That's a stroke. Okay, pulmonary emboli. Have you heard of that? Or throw a clot. That's what you're doing when you have a stroke. You knock something loose from the actual artery wall, okay, and it shoots to the brain and causes damage. Okay, it's a foreign object there, or it shoots to the heart. The lungs and causes damage there. Okay. That's why blood pressure is called the silent killer. Okay, you sometimes don't even know. Sometimes, well, some people get kind of like the little starry, little bursts. So occasionally you can feel, or you'll get a tremendous headache. But sometimes you can, well, I've got allergies, or something else is going on. Blood pressure is something easy to check. Run by the pharmacy. I'm sure anybody here, you've got nurses all over the place that, somebody's feeling like, oh my goodness, let's check my blood. Get your blood pressure checked, okay? That's a real easy something to monitor. That's one set of numbers that's pretty easy to monitor, non-invasive. You don't have to give blood to do it, okay? And of course, hypertension is what high blood pressure is called. Normal, pre-hypertensive, and then hypertension, okay, and the values are on there. Normal is just less than 120 over less than 80, okay, so 120 over 80 or less. If you're in the pre-hypertensive range, that's 120 to 139 over 80 to 89, okay, and then hypertension would be 140 over 90 or greater. And nobody has to share their numbers, but I want you to have these so that you can, keep check of your numbers. We don't want anybody throwing a clot. That would not be good. Body mass index, BMI. Do you all like that number? No. Okay, let me tell you some fallacies with BMI, okay? It's good in some instances, all right? If you are relatively sedentary or inactive, okay, it's probably a pretty accurate number. But there are some better measures or measures that can be used in conjunction or with BMI to get a better indication of what your status is in terms of normal weight, overweight, or obese, okay? Muscle is heavy. Okay, it weighs more than body fat. So if you're somebody who lifts weights, a lot of weights, and you have a very dense body in terms of the amount of muscle that you're carrying around, your BMI is going to be higher. Okay, because BMI is a measure of the relationship between your height and your weight. Okay? So a number that you can use in conjunction with that is waist circumference. And we'll look at that in just a minute. So BMI it's a good measure, but it's not something that you want to look at just as a number by itself. Okay? Do you know what the ideal BMI is? Less than 25. Okay? Less than 25. And if your BMI is 30 or higher, that's considered obese. And there are, in your handout, it's a chart with different colors on it, but it'll show you with your height and your weight what your BMI is, okay? And it'll tell you, what level of, where your weight falls within that normal, overweight or obese range, okay? Any questions so far? Okay, now here's waist circumference. I teach this class. I just have to take all this. It's really interesting. I'm a big weirdo, I guess, when it comes to, different foods and stuff. And my whole thing is balance, moderation, and timing. Okay, you don't have to eliminate anything. You can make anything work. That's where the moderation comes into play. If you're balanced in terms of what you're choosing to put on your plate, you're going to get the nutrients from those different food groups that will help you get your numbers in check and where they need to be. But what has happened in the United States, and I think some other places in the world, back in the late 80s and the early 90s, we went on this fat-free craze, right? Does anybody follow a low-fat, we got to eliminate fat? Okay, I'm not going to point out and call names or anything like that. That's not good. Okay, that's what that low fat, take all the fat out, is what has caused our widening of America, the muffin topping of America. That's what's caused it. Fat is flavor, and it makes you feel full, okay? And it's vital for certain vitamins and minerals, okay? You have vitamins that are fat soluble, which means you've got to have fat in order to get them absorbed and so that your body can use them, okay? So, and I'm tying this into the waist circumference. If you take fat out, flavor, what have you now got to put in to make it taste good? Sugar. The reason we have, from the waist up, the widening of America is the sugar in our diets, period. The reason the rates of heart disease, the rates of metabolic syndrome, okay, which ties into, metabolic syndrome essentially is just a combination of all these different things, okay? If you've got two or more of what we're talking about here, that's metabolic syndrome, okay? The reason the rates of diabetes, heart disease, metabolic syndrome have gone through the roof is because we removed the fat and we put sugar in. Sugar is what causes heart disease, unless you're eating at McDonald's and a bunch of saturated fat, unhealthy fats, because you can, there is a place for certain fats to be not consumed. But it's sugar, okay? Sugar causes your triglycerides to go up. Sugar causes your body to turn off a hormone that says, let's not store body fat. Okay, so then what happens, you eat sugar, your triglycerides go up because you hijack the liver. Your triglycerides go up, and then your body, it's called lipogenesis. Okay, that's fat creation. Okay? Lipogenesis is the laying down of body fat. We're just pouring it in there. So every time you're eating or drinking sugar, or tons of processed carbohydrates that you get from boxes and bags, that's what you're doing. Now, I'm not saying don't eat it, don't drink it. I'm saying moderation, okay? If you're eating a balanced diet, you're covering the fat, the protein, and the carbohydrate in your meals, you're not going to overdo it in any one area, okay? If you're eliminating the fat, you're starving to death. I mean, you're hungry, because the fat's what helps make us feel full, okay? So we've got to incorporate some heart-healthy fats in there, within reason. Get adequate protein, because protein, that's how you burn body fat. Okay, carbohydrates, that's how you lay it on down. Let's put it on, pack it up, pack it in there. Okay, we're going to pack in the fat. We're storing it for later. We don't want to do that, okay? And by having an off balance in the things that we put on our plate, that's what causes these numbers to be off balance and out of whack, okay? So in these lunch and learns, this is like this preview of kind of what you'll get. We're going to teach you how to handle creating balance on that plate, making sure that you're covering all the bases.
What do you intend to prepare balance?
But, okay, you have to eat, and so it doesn't, and it's a wonderful question. I'm not saying that you can't go to fast food. What I'm saying is it's determining what it is that helps you create the balance, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go buy all these gourmet foods and whip up some meals every night. I don't have time for that either. I've got a child that plays football 3 nights a week, from 6 to 8:30, I can't, so I'm with you on the time. But you also have to put yourself first, okay? If you don't think about yourself, then nobody else is going to either. Okay, you're the only one that can affect what actually happens within the being that you're carrying around. This is your vehicle. So do you want a clunker, or do you want a luxury ride? Because if your numbers are off, you're going to be a clunker, okay? Does that make sense? If you put junk in...
You work at 8 to 4, you work 12.
Oh,
so you're not home to prepare meals.
But, and I understand that, but that's where, and we can talk about, some of the lunch and learns that we do, addressing very specific topics such as that, because it really doesn't have to be hard. It can be very, very simple. Okay, and it doesn't even mean that going through the freezer aisle at the grocery store that you can't buy pre-made meals. It just means that what we look for, we have a more critical eye as we're, circling through the grocery, okay? But I also encourage you to incorporate that into the way you do your work here, because all the folks that you serve have the very same needs that you do. When I work with clients, if I'm working with somebody who has diabetes, I asked a lady the other day, and I apologized before I said it. I said, look, because she's had open heart surgery, okay? She's had, I think, a triple bypass, and her physician, her cardiologist, has told her that she's going to have another one because she's already got blockage. And it's only been a couple of years. I asked her, I said, are you thinking about the fish and chips as they're wheeling you into the operating room to have your open heart surgery? Because she was talking about quality of life, and it's just a cruddy quality of life, and she has to eat healthy foods. I'm like, cruddy quality of life, in my opinion, is walking around waiting on yourself to have a stroke. Because your blood pressure's through the roof, you've got swelling in your ankles. That to me is a cruddy quality of life. Making those baby step, teensy, tiny little changes as they begin to pile onto one another create tremendous change without you even realizing what you're doing.
But if you make drastic changes, like
drastic change won't stick.
Fruit salads and fresh foods and fresh salads, and cut down all your fats, and go to caffeine-free diet, colas, and just water and flavored water, then you're not really fixing the problem, right?
No, you are. But the problem with that
Because
is,
there's no fat. I mean, I'm going.
well, but there are ways to put some fat in there that are healthy, like throwing some walnuts onto your salad. I mean, there's different things that you can do that are very simple. But the problem with that is that people go from what they're doing currently and have been doing for such a long, long time, that now they're doing like the polar opposite. You can't stick to it. It's not reasonable to do that. Now, there are very few people, and it's the people with like these personalities that are weird, that can do that and are successful. And if you are successful at that, knock yourself, that's great. Wish I could. But what I'm saying is, it's the baby steps. Commit to one thing, okay? But before you do any of that, and we're going to get to this here in just a second, you've got to determine what the reason is for wanting to make the change. If you don't put something very personal behind it, you're definitely not going to stick to it. So it's finding something that is meaningful to you, that you are able to do, okay? Stick with it, do it, get comfortable with it, own it, then pick something new. Because the last thing that you want to do is make some massive drastic change and then fall off the wagon from that and feel like you've completely failed yourself. Don't do that. Pick something
fall
that...
off the wagon and go right back to it, you're okay, right?
Yes, but you're less likely, if you'll make very calculated change, be very intentional about what you're doing, okay? Why is it that you want to change? What is it that, it's not because I want to weigh a certain number of pounds. That is irrelevant. Do we want the scale to change? Without doubt. Of course you want the scale to change, because if the scale changes, your waist circumference is changing. If the scale is changing, your body mass index is changing. If the scale is changing, your body composition itself is changing. And your body composition is made up of many things. Okay, you've got a bunch of water in there. You've got a bunch of muscle mass in there. You've got your skeletal system. You've got body fat. What the scale won't tell you is the changes that are occurring in all of those different areas. Okay? The way you preserve muscle and lose fat, because fat's what we're wanting to lose, not muscle, is you've got to eat balance. So if you're eliminating, like people who do the Atkins diet or people who do these massive elimination diets, they don't last long term. Okay? You've got to have balance. When you have balance, you preserve the good things, okay, and you lose the parts that you want to lose. All right? So that was just a little off task slightly, but you know, change doesn't have to be drastic. It has to be intentional, okay, and it has to be personal. So if you're wanting the scale to change, bring it home a little bit, dig deep, find out what it is that you're really wanting to see change. What can you do at, just making up a number, 150 pounds that you can't do at your current weight? That's what's important, okay? I mean, we've had folks that we've worked with that, like, I just want to be able to get up and down off the ground. I just want to be able to go to the park with my grandchildren and not be so fatigued that I can't do something at the park with them. Or I want to be able to garden, you know, to be able to get up and down when I'm gardening. Physical, functional things, okay? Those are the things that are meaningful. Okay. What did I closed out the darn, okay, let me just use my notes. Okay, so that was waist circumference. Sorry for getting off task. Any more questions on that, just real quick? No? Okay. And we've talked about percent body fat. But you've got to have body fat. I mean, I'm not even talking about what you're eating. I'm talking about you've got to have fat in your body too, okay? It's protective to some extent. We just don't need tons of it, okay? And again, sugar is the culprit for the body fat right here. Okay, the visceral, which is the part that surrounds the organs, as well as the subcutaneous, the fat that's under the skin. But from here to here, it is the sugar is your main culprit. Okay, so if you want to affect what the midsection looks like, take a look at how much sugar you're putting into your vehicle. Okay. Excess body fat, okay, it increases the risk for diabetes, elevated blood pressure, having a heart attack, stroke, sleep apnea, cancer, and depression. We can talk specifically about those if you want to know why any of those specific conditions are elevated risk with obesity or elevated body fat. You can, let me know. Is there any one specific that you're wondering, well, how does that have anything to do with body fat? Cancer. Excess body fat increases your risk for cancer. Can you think about why that might be? Y'all heard of the cortisol? Okay, that's a hormone. Okay, it's a stress hormone. Anytime you have got excess amounts of body weight that you're carrying around, it's stressful to the body. Okay, it causes chronic inflammation. Not the kind like where your elbow's hurting because you were doing something repeatedly, and it caused inflammation there, or that you twisted your ankle. Not like that. A lot of the inflammation that we have in our bodies that's chronic, you can't even feel it. You don't know that it's happening. It's because of the foods that we eat. They're causing a very inflammatory process to occur in the body, and oftentimes it's high carbohydrate, starchy diets. They're highly inflammatory. And so we talked about insulin a moment ago. If your body is needing insulin regularly on a whole lot of it because you're eating a lot of carbohydrate, that's inflammatory, and it causes your body to release cortisol. Cortisol causes you to break muscle down, and it causes that whole inflammatory process to just kind of start spiraling. Okay, so if we can moderate the whole need for insulin by being more cautious and conscious about the amount of sugar and carbohydrate that you eat, you tame and you fan and knock the flames out of a lot of the different situations that can be occurring in your body. So what's one way? You might drink regular sodas. Okay, that is one way that you can extinguish a flame. Okay? If you eat candy bars on a regular basis, if you eat bags of cookies and chips, or just you're a carb, you love carbs, if you can kind of rein that